I can't really tell you that this is the controller review you've been looking for, because this chunk of plastic dropped in November of 2019, with more accessories and a higher price tag granted. But I can tell you 3 things with certainty. I know that because I've got 3 fingers up. This is a more cost-effective way for gamers to buy yet another Series 2 controller and just use the existing accessory pack that came with their multiple broken Series 2, rather than Microsoft pulling a pro-consumer move and installing magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbstick modules that would never get stick drift, much like the Steel Series and the Ghoulie kit, which I've reviewed on this channel. 2, this controller now has an extended warranty, and it is claimed by Microsoft that it has new internals and a new quality control process that's going to mitigate janky McBroken controllers. But we're going to figure that out firsthand by doing a disassembly or teardown of the new core over here and a traditional OG Series 2, but not in this video. But before you click off, the third and final thing I need to tell you is this is going to be the most comprehensive, in-depth review of this controller you're going to find on this video platform. Packaging and included accessories is going to be a short conversation because there is no included accessories. There is no packaging. Okay, that's a stretch. Don't pull your hamstring. There's a box. There is packaging. This was ordered from Amazon. However, if you ordered from Microsoft Direct, it is going to be delivered in this exact condition as well. However, the outer box is going to be Microsoft, not Amazon, obviously. Little ASMR for you. Well, I like the box more than the original Series 2. You want a close-up of the box? Here it is. If you'd like to pause the box so you can read some of the text, you may do so now. And that side, and the other one, and that one, and the undercarriage. Oh, that's a lot of lime green in there, in case you forget what platform you play on. What a lovely and gorgeous presentation of a bare bones stripped down ass controller. So the box is already like damaged or at least creased, crinkled, which I don't like to see in a brand new product. Take 1 or 2 fingers, dealer's choice. I prefer 2, stick them in the hole. There's going to be documentation in here. You can quote me on it, as well as the 1 included accessory if you don't include the ones that are installed, such as the thumbsticks and the D-pad wheel. This is the metal tool that you can use to adjust the thumbstick tension. Not that you asked, but I always keep it on the lightest setting on the left stick and the tightest or highest resistance on the right. You've got your regulatory and limited warranty, little QR code on the back of your instruction manual, pamphlet, or brochure, which opens up like a little booklet to greet you with full pictures, a little bit of color. What color? Lime green. But it walks you through all the doodads, niblets, and giblets of your controller, which you don't really need this because you have a video. And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, then a video's worth like 1,000,000, which is how many views we're going to get on this video, obviously. As for the cosmetics of this controller, I'm going to be overlaying some cinematic B-roll right now, some glamour shots, if you will. This might be one of the few matte or eggshell white controllers that I actually don't like. The plastics look and feel pretty cheap, chintzy, and flimsy, and what I think really throws off the cosmetics or appearance of this controller, they went with a black Xbox button instead of whiting this out. And this is what really throws a monkey wrench in the old cogs, is the fact they went with silver or stainless steel aluminum, brushed aluminum, if you will, for the D-pad wheel and the bases of the thumbsticks. They should have either gone with that glossy titanium black like the Series 2 or gloss white. This is just an unhandsome contrast pop that doesn't add to anything. But the back does look really sick with these black rubberized grips that do wrap all the way around as well as up on the sides. They did go with black buttons for the trigger locks. I will say the plastics do feel so much cheaper on the hand than the traditional Series 2. I couldn't say that until the build quality section. I had to get it off my chest. It does not even feel like the same controller. This feels like it should be a $50 cheaper controller. And Microsoft threw in a USB-C cable, which is 10 foot, braided, relatively flexible, somewhat lightweight, doesn't have a rubber or Velcro tie back, just one of these little disposable clippers. There is no dust cover on the USB-A or C side, however there is some Xbox branding stamped or emblazoned, and it appears to be dark gray with a little bit of silver speckled in there. That was incredibly generous of them to include a cable. You know what else would be beneficial? Would be some rear paddles or back buttons. The entire point of an esports or pro controller, a premium controller, custom controller, is going to be some doodads, some clickable bits on the back that keep your thumbs on the analog sticks rather than pressing the face buttons and D-pad. Microsoft knows this. They understand the importance of those rear buttons, but yet they don't include them in the box, but they include a little tool for the thumbstick tension and a USB-C cable which I guarantee you have, but you might not have Xbox Elite paddles sitting around. But what I've been hearing frequently is, do the paddles for the Series 2 work on the core? Yeah, it's the same exact controller with cheaper plastics and no accessories. Now with a longer warranty and supposedly better quality control. But yes, I mean, before I even turn this controller around and slap these paddles on, I'm gonna tell you with absolute certainty that they're gonna work. And these are probably gonna look pretty dope too, because you're gonna have that contrast pop of the matte black aluminum paddles against that dirt cheap white plastic. Uh-oh. Please tell me that my fingertips are mistaken. I do think these might actually be different switches, at least it does feel different as I'm sitting here actuating them. A little quieter and a lot more sloppy. So I got 2 paddles on the core and I got 2 paddles on the OG over here, a top and a bottom. Either the pads that you actuate for the rear paddles are different, or it just sounds and feels completely different because of the cheaper plastics. Can't really tell yet. I believe that is a question that will be answered during the teardown or disassembly of these 2 controllers. I'm gonna subscribe to the channel to catch that video. Also, another factor to keep in mind perhaps is that this controller is more broken in. After all, this is about 8 or 9 months old. These switches do break in over time, but it's just such a substantial difference, and not in a good way, at least not for the core. It's hardcore how crappy it feels. Now, I do believe a weight comparison is going to give us a good dictation of build quality, considering the plastics do feel a lot cheaper to the hand. Now, I've got all the accessories or bits that you can slap onto these controllers removed, so no magnetic D-pad, no thumbsticks, and no paddles. These do have internal batteries, so those are installed, obviously. 11 ounces. 11 ounces. 314 grams. 314 grams. It's almost like it's the same controller released 3 years later with a white faceplate for $50 cheaper and no accessories. And the Gears of War Elite Series 1 limited edition with all of its accessories removed, but 2 AA's installed, making it playable. 327 grams. If you have not seen my comprehensive review of the $1,000 controller, please check that out. $1,000, Kevin? Are you high? I've got one of those sitting in my drawer right now. Don't throw it out. Ergonomics and comfort. The 360 controller was freakishly comfortable. The Xbox One controller improved on that. The Series controller is virtually unchanged. They did shave in a few millimeters on the bumpers and change the plastics, and added a share button, of course, which is another dead giveaway of how unchanged this controller is from Microsoft. A share button is a standard feature on a Series controller, and it is a very practical and usable feature, being able to share a screenshot or video clip directly from the controller instead of hitting the Xbox button and then a concurrent face button to share a clip, a feature Sony's been doing since the PS4. And when I noticed that this was still a profile switch button and that they didn't add a share button, this really is the controller we got in 2019. Side tangent over, let's veer back on the road. Ergonomics and comfort, it's freakishly comfortable. A standard Xbox controller, great. You add these rubberized grips, fantastic. And then adding these rear paddles doesn't cut into the comfort too much because they are smaller than the Elite Series 1, and they're pretty close to the rear shell. They're not flush, but they're pretty damn close. As for build quality, the plastics do feel substantially cheaper on the core, and that is because they are not the identical plastics. I would bet my left testy on that, and that's the lucky one. Microsoft is cutting production cost and also the asking price, but more so their production cost to increase their bottom line or their profit margin, and that makes sense. And that's exactly where the core fits in. It inserts between a standard controller, which is about $50 on Amazon, and a fully loaded Series 2, which retails for $180. Granted, they've been out for 3 years and you can get them on sale all the time, and it genuinely does feel like a cheaper controller. I can't tell much in the means of a difference in the rubberized grips. However, the plastics of the rear shell and faceplate are a no-go for me. There is a little bit larger of a gap than I'd like to see where the faceplate and the rear shell meet, and that is because these side panels pop off and there's 2 T8 screws in there, and that's how you're going to disassemble these controllers. But because these are pop-offable or removable, there's a pretty large seam or gap here. I'm not hearing any creaks or moans and groans in the plastic as I try and bend the controller or do the flex test, the stress test, if you will. I'm not going to chuck this thing on the ground or anything like I'm spiking a football. I'm spending too much time in this section of the review. It feels like a cheaper Elite Series 2. Now, as for a quality control reputation, Microsoft has one of the worst with their premium controller, the Elite. The original Elite set the bar extremely low for quality control, and then the Series 2 continued upon that. Now, I have heard Microsoft is tightening up their quality control on all their accessories, standard controllers, headsets, and their Elite controllers, and I have heard less complaints over the last 6 to 8 months or so about Elite controllers crapping out, but I don't know if that's just because gamers are complaining less, or because these controllers are legitimately breaking less. But to address this horrendous quality control reputation that Elites have for being terrible, coming out of the box with broken bumpers, stuck face buttons, usually A or B, and stick drift. Now, I have been extremely lucky. I owned an original Elite, which I disassembled multiple times, fully customized it, had no issues. I've also owned 2 Elite Series 2, well, now 3 if you include the core, and thus far have had no issues. But I feel like I'm in the minority, not the majority, as I do hear a slew of complaints about these controllers. To address that, Microsoft did 2 things. They extended the warranty from 3 months to a year, which their premium controller should have had to start. And Microsoft did say in their official blog during the announcement post for the core controller that they did tighten up the quality control. Best way to find that out is with a teardown. Again, that's a separate video, because this is a review, not a teardown slash disassembly slash comparison. Kevin, why not just do that in this video? Well, because this is already going to be about a 35-minute documentary with timestamps or chapters. It would be about an hour with the full disassembly and teardown. Not to mention, not all people that want a review of this controller give a shit about the internals, and it will be much more discoverable if someone's searching for a disassembly to follow along with to work on their core controller, which hopefully doesn't break. The Elite Series 2 is going to continue to retail for $180, which is what it has retailed for since it launched. The Halo-themed limited edition Elite Series 2, which you're not going to be paying MSRP or retail for, goes for $200 without scalper markups and whatnot. And the new stripped-down core version, when I say stripped down, it isn't lacking any features, but rather included accessories, basically all of them. That controller is going to retail for $130. So $80 more than a standard controller, which interestingly enough, it seems as if Microsoft has renamed their standard Xbox controllers to Core Wireless. Must be a new marketing push, a rebranding of their controller division, if you will. The Xbox Core division, meaning stripped down, just the essentials, a little more budget friendly if you don't want the pro or premium accessories, but lands this controller $50 cheaper than a fully loaded Series 2. And I think that's great that you can pick and choose what you need, so if you don't want swappable thumbsticks, or you're never going to use a carrying case or charging dock, but I don't think anybody's picking up an Elite Series 2 without the intent of ever using the rear paddles. And the funny thing is, if you buy the complete component pack, in essence getting you a complete Elite Series 2, you're paying $190, where you can just buy the Elite Series 2 for $180, but realistically, you can find these on sale all day because they've been out since 2019, as where this is a new offering and probably won't be offered at a discounted price for quite some time because it's already their entry-level offering. Now, the direction pad or D-pad, you and I might just use this to select different weapons. However, this might be the primary movement for a lot of gamers. They primarily play retro games, platformers, fighting games, beat-em-ups. They might never use these analog sticks or thumbsticks. They probably wouldn't be buying an Elite controller. But how is the D-pad? Well, it's removable, it is magnetic. There is a 4-way D-pad that is usable but not included. You can get magnetic accessory packs for the Elite on Amazon freakishly cheap. I will have a couple linked in the description below if you want to customize your controller with different colors and whatnot. But the included accessory is the magnetic wheel, which I personally have always been a fan of for two reasons. One, cosmetically, I think it looks more handsome than a 4-point D-pad in my opinion. And from a performance or practicality standpoint, it does allow you to do roll-offs, or you're trying to get very accurate directional inputs, so down left. The wheel does help with that. I will say it is a little bit sloppy as it is a membrane switch, but it is good. Not just serviceable, it is good. 4 out of 5. As for face or action buttons, cosmetically, I think they look great with a white backing and white lettering, but this is going to be a short conversation because these buttons are identical to a standard Xbox One controller. Everything from spacing to how many millimeters out of the front shell to the resistance required to actuate them, it's like your standard Xbox controller, which is neither good nor bad. It's a rubber membrane switch, there's a rubber plunger mechanism under there that feels all squishy McRubbery, which some gamers actually prefer. I'm not in that camp. I prefer mechanical switches that feel like the tactile click of a mouse. These missionary position buttons will get the job done for you. It is a 3 out of 5. Now as for the accessory buttons or extra clicky bits on the front, we're talking about the Xbox home button, the profile switch button, start, and whatever the hell this button does. Only two things bother me here. The first one is the fact that the Xbox home button's black, not white, and the fact that the pause and suck me button are both membrane, while the profile switch button is mechanical and clicky. I don't like the fact that these are different switches. Kind of bougie and nitpicky, but I'm reviewing a controller. Oh, that actually make a good thumbnail, me looking all disappointed at the core, like, oh, we've already had this controller for 3 years. Now as for thumbsticks, the only included set is the shortest possible sticks that you could comprehend. In fact, when I initially grabbed this controller, I was thinking, dang, these are shorter thumbsticks than a standard Xbox controller, which a stock controller already has freakishly low thumbsticks because those are the most playable for all types of games. However, for shooters, we already know the formula for accuracy. Higher stick with higher resistance, bump the in-game sensitivity up a couple clicks. Left stick really doesn't matter for shit because that's just walking around. How FPS players like their controllers configured, and how you're going to get the core controller. Racers, platformers, RPG, RTS. These sticks can do it all, as well as get you slapped around in a COD lobby. Now, if you get a traditional Series 2, you are going to get this carrying case with 4 additional thumbsticks. We're not going to talk about these because, well, this controller's been reviewed twice on the channel. These thumbsticks are magnetic and are removable. You can get replacements or different versions on Amazon pretty inexpensively. You do have anti-friction rings around the outside of the thumbstick gate, so when you are at full lock, you will glide along smooth plastic rather than the rough shell, which I do like. The thumbstick modules in the Elite, Series 2, and Series 2 Core are literally the same modules that are in a standard Xbox controller, so they are going to have the same quality control issues because they are potentiometer sensors and carbon strike plates. Contact patches is what they're officially called, but I like to call them strike plates. I don't know, it just sounds more aggressive. Point is, they are incredibly susceptible to stick drift, and this controller's no different. Let's plug it into Project Zero and get some readings of the out-of-the-box dead zones and thumbstick accuracy. Over here on the infamous gamepad tester, and suck me sideways and from the back because I don't like thumbsticks like that. Now, to call this out-of-the-box stick drift would be a little bit ambitious and a little bit preemptive, a little bit early. Because these sticks are registering off neutral just slightly enough to where it might be so minuscule it is not registered in-game, we are going to test that, of course, but we have eyes and we do not like to see these numbers. Let me explain. The vertical and horizontal axis of both these thumbsticks is not dead centered, which means that we do have some out-of-the-box drift, at least reflected in gamepad tester. Again, we'll see if it's reflected in game or not. Let's see the out-of-the-box thumbstick accuracy by measuring the circularity. Better than I thought, actually. With our first result here. Let's run a couple more. As I'm gliding along the thumbstick gates, as you have to do for this test here, I'm liking those anti-friction rings, I am. A third and final for good measure, we are going counterclockwise and a little bit slower this time. Pretty consistent results. We're getting about 10% average air on the thumbsticks, which means they're not the most accurate, which is exactly what we expected because they are the exact thumbstick modules as a standard Xbox controller. I'm giving thumbsticks 3 out of 5. As for your options with thumbstick caps, these already have the magnetic bases, so you can go onto Amazon and there are several third-party kits. I'll have a couple linked in the description below that don't suck ass. But if you wanted to use some universal slipover caps, of course those work because they just slide over the top of any thumbstick cap. Or maybe you wanted to use licensed Kontrol Freeks. I don't blame you, they feel fantastic. The PS4 and 5 ones are loose and wiggly. Nintendo Switch ones, loose and wiggly. However, the Xbox One and Series fits perfectly and feels fantastic. And I do recommend that you take off the thumbstick before installing the cap, as I did here, instead of pressing down on the thumbstick modules, because you have the option of using the magnetic sticks. Go ahead and use them. Oh, that feels good and looks good too. That might be staying on there permanently. That looks pretty sick. Bumpers look and feel identical to the traditional Series 2. They do feel a little bit different on the fingertip because the surface area, the plastics are a little bit different. By different, I mean cheaper. I'm gonna go ahead and give bumpers a 3 out of 5. Triggers. You do have 3-way trigger stops, which I absolutely love because they work. They do exactly what trigger locks are supposed to do. They lock out about 90% of the trigger pull when you are at stage 3, and the halfway mark does just that. It cuts out about 50% of the trigger pull. And when they're turned off, you can still use this controller to modulate the throttle and brake inside something like a racing game. Cosmetically, I also love the fact that they went with a black button inside of that white rear shell. I think that looks really cool. I love the 3-way trigger stops on the Series 2. These are no different. I'm giving them 5 out of 5. Rear paddles or back buttons. It has them, well, not included, but you can use them. You just pop them in. They are magnetized. You do have the switches, the actuators. You just need the metal doohickeys. If you have a 3D printer, you could probably find the files, the blueprints, to print out some plastic paddles at home, but if you want the aluminum metal ones, they're pretty inexpensive on Amazon. I do think they should be included. That should be the one accessory that is included. We don't need a USB-C cable. We don't really need that little tool for adjusting the thumbsticks. You know why? You can pop them off. You could use a flathead screwdriver. You don't have one of those laying around. A pair of scissors. Shoot, maybe even your thumbnail. We could make do with a butter knife in the kitchen drawer, but what we can't really just pull out of our tuchuses is some metal rear paddles, which is the main feature of a Pro controller. Jesus Christ. As you can see, the Series 2 paddles transfer directly over. Do the Elite 1 paddles work? Yes, partially. So the bottom 2 paddles, no problem whatsoever. I wouldn't recommend using these because the original Elite paddles were too large. They were too long, too wide, and also stuck too far off the rear shell. The Series 2 revision fixed all those issues. But when you run into fitment issues is when you try and pop on these top paddles. You can rock them like that, but that doesn't really feel ergonomically comfortable because it cuts too far into your middle finger. But if you flip them, as you can see, they're overlapping, and when you press the top paddles, they actually depress the rear paddles, or they just jam in completely. So it doesn't really work like that. Let's try Elite 1 bottom paddles and Elite 2 top paddles. Yes, that works and actually feels kind of good. Let's try it the other way. The same fitment or clearance issues, they are rubbing or scraping. Let's swap them. You can see just by looking at it why that wouldn't be comfortable. Like, for God's sake, it digs into your finger and it's not comfortable at all. So Elite Series 1 paddles, I wouldn't rock them. That's one of the coolest things about the Elite controllers is you can do so many different variations. That's how I like to run mine usually. Other than the fact that magnetic paddles are not included, they are virtually perfect. I love them on the Elite Series 2, and this is an Elite Series 2 Core. All of my thoughts transfer over from the Series 2. These are virtually perfect. They're very ergonomic, very comfortable, removable. If you want to rock 2, or you're playing a game that needs no paddles, not a problem. They're metal, you're not gonna break them. And the switches do feel pretty good. They require a good amount of resistance. You get a nice satisfying tactile click when you do actuate them that not only you hear, maybe you're wearing a headset and you don't hear shit, but you will also feel that click in your hand. It's very confidence inducing. I'm giving these paddles a 4 out of 5. Why I do not give them a 5 out of 5 is that I think Microsoft has stopped innovating, stopped progressing, stopped evolving, stopped changing, stopped upgrading their controllers for now. This is not an upgrade by any means. In fact, some people would consider this a downgrade. With the awesome changes from the original Elite to the Series 2 paddles, just imagine if they would have shaved these down just a few more millimeters, maybe got it even closer to the rear shell, they could have made some very slight tweaks or revisions to make these paddles even better than they already are, but they didn't. 4 out of 5. Because of complacency. And I understand if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and these paddles are not only not broke, they're good. Microsoft could improve on an already good formula with these paddles. And I'd like to see that. The only way to remap the rear paddles is through the Xbox Accessories app, which is baked into the settings of the Xbox. This is both good and bad. It's good because you don't need to install a third-party application like Razer, Nacon, Astro, Victrix, Gambit, and a lot of the competitors make you do. It's already installed on your Xbox. Seamlessly integrated, if you will. However, this is one of the only Pro controllers that you can't rebind on the fly, which really sucks ass cheeks because it takes longer to Alt-tab over to the Xbox Accessories app if you're on PC, or to exit a game and launch the settings of your Xbox, rather than just to hold down the profile button and then hold down a rear paddle and a face button and bind it like that. That also comes into play if you're using these controllers on a different platform like PlayStation 5 or Nintendo Switch, using an adapter like the Brook ones I've reviewed on the channel recently, in which case you won't have access to the Xbox Accessories app because you're not on an Xbox. So this is actually making me very nervous for the case of out-of-the-box stick drift. The controller automatically started testing itself in polling rate checker when I was not actually rotating the left analog stick, which means, well, it's, you know, inputting on its own. That's not good. Let's get an idea of the out-of-the-box input delay by measuring the polling rate or refresh rate inside of X input test. I'm going to deem the first results inconclusive as I know that that's incorrect. So that's a lot more believable as the out-of-the-box polling rate is most likely locked at 125 Hertz, giving us around 8 to 10 milliseconds of input delay. So I'm continuing to get results in this realm, which is not good because these are shit numbers. Not only in the average, but also in consistency as the minimum and maximum spread are quite far from each other. That's a thigh gap right there. That's about right. We'll run one more for safe measure. Awesome. Let's see if this controller is susceptible to being overclocked. I don't think it will be because it's going to be polling rate locked. Like for sure. Over here in the Lord of Mice overclocking software program, and we are recognized as an Xbox One controller in Windows 11. We are not overclocked, as you can see, not being filtered. Ignore that number. It's never indicative of what the controller actually is. And we know through our testing that it's actually closer to 8 to 10 milliseconds of out-of-the-box delay. Probably will not change with this process because it's going to be polling rate locked. But let's try anyway. Much like college, can't hurt to experiment. Welcome to the dorm. All right, let's see here. I'm sure you've seen my overclocking guide, but if you haven't, it is linked in the description below. You're going to click here or here. I like over here. Install service. Yes, sir. 1000. Install service. Filter on device. Install service a third and final time. Unplug the love bug. Replug. Make sure it's snug. Didn't know you were watching Dr. Seuss, did you? Overclocked. My God, look at those results. They are so identical to what we had already. I'm giving out-of-the-box input lag or delay a 2 out of 5 because there are Xbox controllers out there, granted they are wired, that are faster, and there's definitely faster PlayStation controllers. I mean, for God's sake, we know with an overclock, you can get the DualSense controller to under 1 millisecond of input delay. I'm going to give overclocking performance a 3 out of 5 because while it does not lower the average input delay, what overclocking an Xbox controller does is make it more consistent. As I showed during my overclocking tutorial, the minimum and maximum get closer together so it's less of a spread, meaning it is a more consistent connection when you are wired to the PC. Keep in mind, we're not talking about Bluetooth overclocking like you can do in DS4 Windows for PS4 and 5 controllers. I forget what video it was. I think it might have been the overclocking guide. We got to around 2 milliseconds of input delay via Bluetooth. We were still under 1 millisecond wired, but around 2 milliseconds on Bluetooth, that's pretty damn fast. We have a few other methods for using this controller on PC. We have the licensed Xbox adapter for Windows. This is the newer version that is more slimlined and smaller. Plug it into one of the USB ports on your PC. It doesn't have to be 3.0. You're not going to get a speed boost by using a better USB port. Once you're plugged into your PC tower, you are going to press this button on top, which is pretty much flush and could easily be missed, but you hold this down, and that's basically the sync or pairing button on your Xbox console, and then you press the sync button on the top of your Xbox controller after you wake it up. Connected to my PC wireless wirelessly using the licensed Xbox adapter. You have that nice teal green glow coming from the Xbox home button. I wish you could customize that on the console. All you can do is dim it. As we're on PC, you actually can address it in programs like Rewazd and select a custom color, which is pretty cool. Sharing my screen, it's already running a test because, you know, out of the box stick drift. Come on down, come on. So the exact same results we were getting wired via USB-C, which is a good thing. That shows the consistency of the licensed Xbox adapter. It's literally the exact same speed and consistency. Let's run a couple more. Oh, shoot. I was holding the controller like this, and I accidentally pressed the sync button, causing her to sporadically have a epileptic seizure on herself, and obviously it ruined my test results. Exit the laboratory then. She's up and running again. No biggie. No biggie smalls. The exact same results in both peak speeds, average speeds, minimum and maximum spread, both wired and wireless. So unless you have a personal preference or a reason for wanting to go wired, for example, never having to worry about the battery dying on you, if you're worried about input lag or delay, simply do not be. If you're on Windows 10 or 11 and you are using the licensed adapter, you are getting virtually the same speed and consistency with that adapter wirelessly than wired via USB-C. I know it sounds like I'm talking some real cockamamie, loose nuts, harebrained, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, Earth is flat and hollow until I stuff her. But trust me, wireless technology has gotten so far advanced in the last 8 or 9 years. The difference between being wired and wireless with things like mice and controllers and headsets is so minuscule nowadays. And the benefits are so vast. The main one being you're not tangled up, tethered up via wire. Let's test the Bluetooth connection because I do believe that one will be a little bit slower. By a little bit, I mean noticeably. Bluetooth is a slower and less consistent means of data transfer than something like a 2.4 gigahertz dongle or the licensed Xbox adapter, which uses Xbox Wireless, which is a separate band, not 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. It's its own unique frequency, which Microsoft has yet to disclose and probably never will because it's like their licensed proprietary RF signal that doesn't get interference from other wireless devices in your room. Also, something to note about this adapter, it was only plugged in for about 3 minutes. It's already warm to the touch, so these do get pretty steamy. To connect an Xbox controller to PC via Bluetooth, first of all, you need to make sure the controller has Bluetooth. The original Xbox controllers that had the notch or chin cut out prior to the Xbox One S and X midlife refresh, where they introduced the controllers that were all one piece without that chin or lip. That's when they added Bluetooth to their controllers, so the Elite Series 2 has Bluetooth as well. Go ahead and wake up the controller by pressing the Xbox button, then hold down the sync button for around 3 seconds, and you will begin sporadically flashing. This time we're not using the Xbox wireless adapter. Press the Windows key on your keyboard and type in B, literally B, and the first thing that pops up should be Bluetooth and device settings. And you may be tempted with Xbox controllers with wireless adapter, but remember, we're not using that adapter, sweetheart. We've already done that. We're doing the Bluetooth route. Make sure your controller is still flashing in the pairing mode, which it is. And it took several seconds for it to be registered and named as an Xbox Elite wireless controller, but there she is. Go ahead and click on it. They have chemistry between each other, but now they're going to meet up at the bar and connect. That was a weird analogy there, bud. And now, much like us in the streets, it's connected. Okay, whoa, we're seeing some big numbers there. Now, generally bigger number, better person, but right now what we want is something muy poquito. We want something really delicate, really tiny, really light on the palate, and we're not getting that here. We're seeing some massive numbers. Also, it's stuttering and sputtering like a 65 Buick. Come on, honey. I can't even finish the test because it's sporadically spirating. She's spirating out of control right now. She's off her Valium again. I'd like to get at least one conclusive result for Bluetooth speed. Holy crap. Nothing? She didn't even register that I'm giving her the business. Okay, lesson of the campfire tale. Don't you ever use Bluetooth. Just don't you dare do it. Are you serious? All right, so, oh man. So as Drake said, no lie, I've got stick drift on the left and right analog stick right out of the box, which, believe it or not, has actually never happened to me before. I've actually only developed stick drift on 3 controllers, and that was through savage use. Out of the box, I've never experienced stick drift, but now I have, and that's exciting. Not so much for the quality control claims that the core is built better, because I didn't have any out of the box stick drift on my Elite 1 or either of my Series 2s, but with the core, I do. So it's playable, but there's definitely drift. So it's harder to get it to drift with the left stick for the movement. Right now, I'm actually trying to get it to drift, and it's not doing it, but it was earlier. But with the right analog stick, if you aim just ever so slightly to the right, it's going to drag right and downward, which makes me want to wail like that banshee out in the distance there. Just, stick drift. Fuck it. I don't think he's a big fan of stick drift either. Yeah, that was a no look for sure. So over here following my own advice from some of the previous tutorials I've done about mitigating stick drift, if you have it, over here in the settings of Steam Big Picture mode, controller settings, Xbox One controller, calibrate. Sweetheart, where are you going? You're walking off. Yeah, these pups are on the move. You don't keep them on a leash, they'll wander the yard. You don't like to see this. This is what you like to do with a brand new controller. These are actually really bad. This might be out of the scope and scale of what you can adjust with software. Wowzers, guys. Let's launch the same game. That way it's a scientific medium, if you will, in our testing. That way we can't blame it on, oh, Kevin was playing a different game. That's pretty loud. Do you prefer me right here, or right here? This is a video, not a live stream. Never mind. You're going to get what you're going to get. So it's a lot better now, but you can get it to drift if you lightly feather the right stick. It's a little tricky, but you can get her to drift, let me tell you. It is a challenge now to get it to drift, so that calibration did its job. Up. So that's pretty wild that this is now the 4th controller that I've ever owned that got stick drift, and the first one right out of the box from the factory, OEM sealed. However, all I did was the little integrated Steam auto calibrate. I've got a couple more tricks up my sleeve, so I'm going to experiment and see if I can minimize that out of the box stick drift, which is pretty disgusting. But putting that aside, I'm going to move on with the review, completely putting that aspect on the back burner. I did order this through Amazon, so I have that additional customer support, which is great for this exact kind of situation. And it's also a much quicker way of getting a non-broken controller in your hand versus going through Microsoft directly. So with this particular review, I'm not going to do pros or cons because this is virtually identical to the controller that dropped in 2019, minus any included accessories and with cheaper feeling plastics. Cheaper feeling because they are cheaper plastics that I'm sure are substantially cheaper to manufacture. Microsoft is claiming increased quality control. I'm going to call bullshit on that because this is the only controller I've ever experienced out of the box stick drift with, and I have dabbled with a few controllers in my day. I've got more than one gamepad laying around the house is all I'm saying. You would think like accidentally, statistically, I would have stumbled or encountered a controller with stick drift by now out of the box. She's my first, and she wasn't delicate. I didn't enjoy it. I'm sure my second time will be better. Hey, it's Kevin from the future, and I cracked the Da Vinci Code. Surprise, surprise, you actually have to update your new Xbox controller. You can do this on your Windows 10 or 11 PC by going into the Xbox app, plugging in your controller. On the Xbox One and Series console, it's just done wirelessly. But doing that initial firmware update that you are prompted to do when you first sync up your controller to the console remedied the out-of-the-box stick drift issues I was having. However, generally for my reviews, I go straight to the PC to run some tests, and I've never had out-of-the-box drift like that, but luckily it was fixed just by doing the Xbox update. While doing that initial firmware update on the Xbox console did tighten up the out-of-the-box stick drift where the controller's pretty damn well playable on the PC and the console, it's still not looking too great here in Gamepad Tester. As I take my fingers completely off both thumbsticks, you can see we're idling with some numbers that we should not be. This controller slots into a very interesting price point as it is $50 cheaper. However, you do end up spending $200 if you buy the accessory pack that you would get for a recommended $180 by buying a normal Series 2. However, since that controller's been out since November of 2019, it's on sale constantly on Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, all over the place. And Microsoft is betting that you've probably got a few of these sitting around with stick drift. So you've got accessory packs sitting around that you can just slap onto this new core controller. It'd be great if they could have mitigated the problem completely instead of just monetizing us on the back end by making us purchase more controllers. The verdict, my genuine unlocked thoughts. This is the same controller that we've had for 3 years, but with cheaper plastics, no accessories included. I'm pretty underwhelmed. I picked it up primarily to do a comprehensive review, to disassemble it and compare it side by side with the internals of the Series 2. That video is coming in the very near future. And I'm also going to do 4 or 5 modifications or tweaks that are truly going to change the looks of, well, maybe not this core, but the core controller we're going to have around the gamer heaven. I don't know if this is the one, but it's not going to be looking like a stock rock for very long. Drop in the comment section below your opinion of the core controller as well as the Elite 1, 2, shoot, any pro controller. We'll get a conversation going, and I'll see you stallions and stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. Check out Into the AM for some of the sickest looking and most comfortable cloth to ever grace my gaming giblets. If you don't want to be scorching your corneas with harmful blue light, check out Gamer Advantage, the only blue light glasses on the market that look sexy and actually work. If you're looking for a custom controller that'll blow the competition's tits back, AIM definitively has the best bang for buck or price to performance when it comes to Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch controllers. Nope, they don't do Switch, but they do gaming mice. I said doo-doo. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. If you need a quick laugh or blast of gamer adrenaline, check my short form videos out at TikTok. To get in touch with with myself and the stallions and stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding. Starting June, I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily. All the time. 60% of the time. Sometimes. Most of the time. Peace.